I think my mother-in-law younger brother is my soulmate. I knew I was making a mistake the moment I said I do. Not because Ethan was cruel. He wasn't. He was kind in the way strangers are kind, polite smiles. Remembered birthdays, expensive gifts when he forgot to call. But love, the kind that shakes your soul and makes you feel seen, that had never existed between us. Still, I married him. Because my mother said he was stable. Because my friends said I was lucky. Because after turning 28, everyone suddenly acted like my life would expire if I stayed single. And because Ethan's mother, Diane Whitmore, practically worshipped me. "You're perfect for my son," she kept saying during the engagement dinner. A calm woman. Not dramatic like girls these days. I smiled through it all. But then I met him. Luca, Diane's youngest brother. He arrived late to the rehearsal. Dinner wearing a black button-up, with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. Rain dripping from his dark hair. Every woman in the room noticed him immediately, but he only looked at me, and when our eyes met, my chest tightened so hard I nearly dropped my wine glass. Like my body recognized him before my mind did. "You okay?" Ethan whispered beside me. I nodded too quickly. Luca walked over slowly, his gaze never leaving mine. "You must be Olivia." His voice was low, rough, familiar somehow. I swallowed. "And you're late." A corner of his mouth lifted. Diane groaned dramatically. "That's Luca, always arriving like he's the main character." Everyone laughed except him. He kept staring at me. Then he held out his hand. The second our skin touched, a sharp pain shot through my chest. I gasped. Luca froze too. His fingers tightened around mine for half a second before he quickly let go. No one else noticed, but I saw the panic in his eyes. And somehow, I knew he felt it too. The wedding happened anyway. I walked down the aisle while Luca stood near the back beside the stained glass windows, looking like he wanted to burn the entire church down. I avoided looking at him, because every time I did, my heart beat so violently, it scared me. During the reception, Ethan disappeared with his college friends, while I was trapped listening to Diane brag about family, investments, and grandchildren. "You'll give me beautiful babies," she said confidently. I nearly choked on my champagne. "I think they should enjoy marriage first," a voice interrupted. "Luca." He leaned lazily against the doorway holding a whiskey glass. Diane rolled her eyes. "Nobody asked you." Good thing I wasn't talking to you. The tension between them was immediate. Interesting. Diane adored Ethan but clearly had issues with her younger brother. "Luca never takes life seriously," she complained to me after he walked away. "No wife, no children, constantly traveling. He's impossible." But I found myself watching him the rest of the night. The way he avoided crowds, the way his expression softened whenever he accidentally looked at me, the way he left the reception early without saying goodbye. And for some reason, that hurt. 3 weeks after the wedding, I saw him again. Ethan had dragged me to Diane's enormous family dinner party. I almost didn't go because Ethan and I had argued the entire drive there. He barely touched me anymore, barely looked at me. Marriage already felt cold. Inside the mansion, everyone talked loudly around the long dining table while I silently pushed food around my plate. Then the lights suddenly flickered. A strange pressure filled the room, and Luca walked in. Late again. His eyes immediately found mine. The pressure in my chest returned instantly. He looked exhausted this time. Angry, too. Diane sighed dramatically. "You could at least pretend to care about this family. I came, didn't I?" Then his gaze shifted back to me. And the room disappeared. I couldn't breathe. Something about him pulled at me in a way that felt terrifyingly unnatural. As dinner continued, I excused myself to the backyard just to clear my head. Cold air hit my skin as I stood near the garden fountain trying to calm down. "You feel it too." I spun around. Luca stood in the shadows. My pulse jumped. "Feel what?" He stared at me for a long moment before speaking carefully. "That thing between us." I should have denied it. Instead, I whispered, "What is it?" "I don't know." He walked closer, slowly. But I know I've never experienced this before. Neither had I. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But another part of me, the deeper part, felt strangely safe near him. "You're my brother-in-law," I said weakly. His jaw tightened. "Trust me. I'm aware." Silence stretched between us. Then suddenly the fountain lights burst. Water sprayed everywhere. I gasped. Luca cursed under his breath. And for the first time since meeting him, I realized this wasn't normal attraction. Something much bigger was happening to us. After the fountain exploded, Luca grabbed my wrist and pulled me back before the glass light fragments could hit me. His hand wrapped around mine again, and that strange feeling returned instantly. Heat, pressure, like invisible electricity crawling beneath my skin. We both jerked apart at the same time. "What the hell was that?" I whispered. Luca looked genuinely shaken now. "I don't know." The backyard lights flickered violently again before stabilizing. Inside the house, laughter continued like nothing had happened. Nobody noticed, but Luca kept staring at me like I was something dangerous. "You should stay away from me," he muttered suddenly. I blinked. "You think I want this?" "No," he said quietly. "That's the problem." Before I could answer, the patio door slid open. "There you are." Diane stepped outside holding a wine glass. Her smile immediately faded when she saw how close we were standing. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Olivia, Ethan's been looking for you." I quickly stepped away from Luca. I was just getting air. "Clearly." The word came out sharper than expected. Luca rolled his eyes. Relax, Diane. Nobody's seducing your precious daughter-in-law. Funny, she snapped. You usually seduce everyone. Tension crackled between them. I suddenly understood why family dinners felt uncomfortable whenever Luca was around. Diane didn't just dislike him. She distrusted him. And for some reason, that made me nervous. The drive home with Ethan was silent. He kept checking his phone every few minutes, while I stared out the window, replaying everything that happened outside with Luca. The exploding lights, the unbearable pull between us, the way his voice softened whenever he spoke to me. Are you even listening? Ethan asked suddenly. I blinked. What? He scoffed. Exactly. I'm tired. You've been tired ever since the wedding. The irritation in his voice surprised me. I turned toward him slowly. What's that supposed to mean? It means you barely talk to me anymore. I almost laughed at the hypocrisy. He came home late almost every night, spent more time on his phone than with me, and now suddenly I was the problem. But before I could argue, his phone lit up again. A woman's name flashed across the screen. Sophie. He declined it quickly. Too quickly. Something cold settled in my stomach. Who's Sophie? No one. That didn't look like no one. Ethan gripped the steering wheel harder. Can we not do this tonight? My chest tightened. Because deep down, I already knew. 3 days later, I found the hotel receipt. I wasn't snooping. Honestly, I was just looking for our electricity bill in Ethan's office drawer when the folded paper slipped out. Luxury hotel, 2 guest, 1 bed suite. Last weekend. The same weekend he claimed he was at a work conference. For a second, I just stared at it. Then I laughed, not because it was funny, because after everything, I still felt more guilty about thinking of Luca than Ethan clearly felt cheating on me. The realization made me sick. That night, Diane invited us to another family gathering. I almost refused, but Ethan insisted we go, probably out of guilt. The second we arrived, I spotted Luca standing alone on the balcony with a cigarette between his fingers. His eyes found mine instantly, like they always did, and somehow, I knew he could tell something was wrong. Smile more, Diane whispered sharply beside me. You're a married woman now. Stop looking miserable. I forced a fake smile. Across the room, Luca's expression darkened. Hours later, I escaped to the upstairs hallway to breathe. I heard footsteps behind me. You look like you're about to commit murder. I turned. Luca leaned against the wall, watching me carefully. I'm fine. Terrible lie. I looked away. He stepped closer. What happened? For some reason, my chest burned. Not from attraction this time. Pain. And before I could stop myself, I pulled the hotel receipt from my purse and handed it to him. Luca read it silently. His jaw flexed dangerously. When did you find this? This morning. And he doesn't know? I shook my head. For a moment, Luca said nothing. Then, very softly, I'm going to kill him. Despite everything, I almost smiled. You can't murder your nephew. Watch me. The tension broke slightly, but then his expression changed again, softer this time, more vulnerable. You deserve better than him. The words hit me harder than they should have, because Ethan had never once looked at me the way Luca did. Like I mattered, like he actually saw me. You barely know me, I whispered. Luca's eyes held mine. That's the strange part. My pulse stumbled. He slowly reached toward me like he was fighting himself every second. Then his fingers brushed mine, and suddenly, the hallway lights shattered. Every bulb exploded at once. I gasped. Downstairs, people screamed, but Luca wasn't looking at the broken glass. He was staring at me in horror. Olivia, he said quietly, I think we're soulmates. And somehow, the scariest part was that I already knew. Soulmates? The word echoed in my head as glass crunched beneath our shoes. Downstairs, Diane shouted for someone to turn the power back on while guests panicked over the exploding lights. But upstairs, the world felt completely still. Luca looked pale. Not scared for himself, scared of me. That's impossible, I whispered. I know. You don't even believe in that stuff. A humorless laugh escaped him. I definitely didn't before you. My heart pounded violently. Soulmates weren't real. They belonged in fantasy novels and cheesy movies, not in real life, and definitely not between a married woman and her mother-in-law's younger brother. This is insane, I said, stepping back. Luca ran a hand through his hair in frustration. You think I don't know that? Then explain the lights. I can't. The chandelier downstairs suddenly flickered again. Luca cursed under his breath. Every time we touch, something happens. A chill spread through me. Because he was right. The fountain exploding, the pressure in the air, the shattered bulbs. None of it made sense. And somehow, my body already knew the truth before my mind accepted it. I felt connected to him, in a way that terrified me. We avoided each other for 2 weeks after that. Or at least, tried to. Ethan barely noticed anything was wrong. He was too busy disappearing at odd hours and guarding his phone like it contained state secrets. Meanwhile, I felt like I was losing my mind. Everywhere I went, something reminded me of Luca. A song, a scent, black motorcycles, whiskey, rainstorms. And every night, I dreamed about him. Not inappropriate dreams. Worse, dreams where we sat together quietly like we'd known each other forever. Dreams where he touched my face like I was precious. Dreams where he looked at me with unbearable sadness. I woke up missing him every single time. It was awful. Then Diane invited me shopping. I almost said no, but I needed distraction. Unfortunately, distraction was the last thing I got, because halfway through lunch at the luxury cafe, Diane casually said, "Luca's leaving again." I looked up too quickly. "Leaving?" Her lips thinned. "Europe this time. He always runs when life gets complicated." Something heavy settled in my chest. "When?" "Tomorrow." I stared down at my coffee. Why did that hurt so much? Diane studied me carefully now. "You seem interested in my brother lately." Alarm shot through me. "No, he's not relationship material, Olivia." The warning in her voice was sharp. "He destroys everything he touches." I frowned slightly. "You really hate him." For the first time, Diane looked uncomfortable. "I raised him," she said quietly. That surprised me. "What?" "Our parents died when he was 16. I practically became his mother." Her expression hardened again. "And trust me, Luca has always been trouble." Something about the way she said it felt incomplete, like there was more she wasn't telling me. Before I could ask, her phone rang. She stepped away to answer it. And seconds later, another voice spoke behind me. "You shouldn't listen to her." I froze. "Luca." He stood near the cafe entrance wearing a dark coat, his expression unreadable. My heart reacted instantly, painfully. "What are you doing here?" I whispered, picking up coffee. "You hate coffee." His mouth twitched slightly. "Good point." Diane was still distracted on the phone outside, which meant for the first time, we were alone. The tension between us was unbearable. "You're leaving tomorrow," I said quietly. Luca's eyes searched mine carefully. "Does that bother you?" "Yes, too much." But I forced myself to shrug. "Not my business." He stepped closer, slowly. "You're a terrible liar too." My breath caught. Being near him felt dangerous now, like standing too close to fire. "You should go," I whispered. I tried. "What?" "Avoiding you." His voice dropped lower. It didn't work. The confession hit me like a punch. Because I'd failed too. Completely. "I'm married," I reminded him weakly. "And your husband is cheating on you." I flinched. Luca immediately looked guilty. "Sorry." "No," I said softly. "You're right." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he asked quietly, "Why haven't you left him?" I opened my mouth, closed it again, because I didn't know. Fear, maybe? Embarrassment. The humiliation of admitting my marriage was already falling apart. Or maybe because some part of me knew leaving? Ethan would make whatever existed between me and Luca real. And that terrified me more than anything. Outside the cafe, thunder rumbled. Luca glanced toward the stormy sky before looking back at me. "When I leave tomorrow," he said carefully, "you need to forget about me." My chest tightened painfully. "I don't know if I can." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Luca went completely still. And suddenly every light inside the cafe flickered again. People around us murmured in confusion. But neither of us looked away from each other. "Olivia," he whispered like it hurt to say my name. "You're making this very hard." Then he turned and walked away before I could answer, leaving me sitting there realizing something horrible. I didn't want him to go. Luca left the next morning. I knew because I checked my phone 3 times before sunrise like some pathetic, lovesick teenager. Even though he never texted me. Not once. Still, I felt it the second he boarded that plane. An emptiness settled inside my chest so suddenly that I had to sit down on the kitchen floor. It made no sense. How could I miss someone who was never mine to begin with? "You look awful," Ethan said as he walked into the kitchen. I glanced up at him. He was dressed too nicely for a regular workday. Expensive watch. New cologne. That same distracted expression he'd worn for weeks. I suddenly felt exhausted. "I know about Sophie," I said quietly. He froze. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he sighed. Actually sighed, like I was inconveniencing him. "Olivia, how long?" Ethan rubbed his face. "It just happened." I laughed bitterly. Men always say that, like, affairs fall from the sky. It wasn't serious. The words hurt more than they should have. Not serious. So destroying our marriage was casual to him. "Do you love her?" I asked. He hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. Something inside me cracked quietly. I want a divorce. Ethan looked genuinely shocked now. "Come on, don't be dramatic." "Dramatic." I stared at him in disbelief. "You cheated on me, and you think ending a marriage immediately is mature." I almost laughed at the audacity. "You disappeared for months. Ethan, you stopped trying before we even got married." His jaw tightened. "So what? Marriage gets boring sometimes." Boring. That word settled heavily in my chest. Because maybe that was the problem. Ethan never loved deeply enough to understand why those words destroyed me. "You don't get to betray me and act offended when I leave." For the first time, he looked nervous. Probably because divorce would embarrass his perfect family, especially Diane. "Can we at least talk about this later?" he asked carefully. "No." I stood up slowly. "I'm done." Diane reacted exactly how I expected. "You're overreacting," she snapped the second Ethan told her. We sat in her enormous living room while Ethan stared silently at the floor. Like a child waiting for his mother to fix his mistakes. "He cheated," I said flatly. Diane waved a dismissive hand. Men make mistakes. I blinked slowly. Excuse me? You can't throw away a marriage over one little affair. One little affair. The rage that filled me then was almost unfamiliar. And suddenly I understood why Ethan behaved the way he did. Because his family allowed it, protected it, excused it. You raised a man who thinks loyalty is optional, I said coldly. Diane's face hardened instantly. Careful. No, I replied. You be careful. Even Ethan looked stunned by my tone, but I was done shrinking myself to keep everyone comfortable. I spent months blaming myself for this marriage failing, I continued. Meanwhile, your son was sleeping with another woman. Diane crossed her arms. And what exactly were you doing? You've been distracted lately too. My stomach dropped slightly. Her eyes narrowed. Then quietly, is this about Luca? The room went silent. Ethan finally looked up sharply. What? Panic flashed through me. There's nothing happening with Luca. But Diane kept staring at me, studying me, like she was finally connecting dots she didn't want to see. You look at him strangely, she said softly. Diane, Ethan warned uncomfortably. No, she snapped. I knew something felt wrong. I never touched him, I said immediately. That part was true, but guilt still burned through me because, emotionally, I was already lost. Diane suddenly stood up. You need to leave. I blinked. What? You heard me. Her voice shook slightly now. Not angry, afraid. And somehow, that scared me more. That night, rain hammered against my apartment windows while I packed a suitcase. Ethan stayed downstairs making phone calls instead of stopping me. Typical. I folded another sweater angrily when suddenly, the lights went out. My breath caught. Every lamp in the apartment died at once. Thunder roared outside. Then my phone started vibrating violently on the bed. Unknown number. Heart pounding, I answered. Hello? Heavy breathing filled the line for a second. Then Luca's voice. Are you okay? Every emotion I'd been suppressing nearly broke free right then. How did you know something was wrong? I don't know, he admitted roughly. I just felt it. The lights flickered weakly around me. My chest tightened painfully. Luca, I whispered. I asked for a divorce. Silence. Then very quietly. Did he hurt you? The concern in his voice almost destroyed me. No. Another pause. Then, coming home. What? No, you don't have to. I do. His voice was firm now. Because something's wrong, Olivia. I can feel it. Lightning flashed outside my windows. At the exact same moment, every electronic device in the apartment sparked violently. I gasped, and on the other end of the phone, so did Luca. Then the line suddenly died, leaving me standing alone in darkness. Realizing our connection was becoming stronger, Luca came back 2 days later. I knew before anyone told me. At exactly 7:45 a.m., I woke up with my heart racing so hard it physically hurt. The strange pressure in the air returned instantly. And somehow, I knew he was close. It should have terrified me. Instead, relief flooded through me so powerfully that tears burned my eyes. By morning, Ethan was gone. No note, no apology, just silence. I stared at the empty side of the bed for a long moment before laughing bitterly. So this was marriage. I was still sitting there when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. We need to talk. Alone, Diane. Something about the message made my stomach twist. Still, I agreed. Diane chose a quiet private garden behind an old hotel downtown. The second I arrived, I realized she looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes. Perfect makeup, barely hiding stress. For once, she didn't look intimidating. She looked scared. You came, she said softly. You sounded serious. She motioned for me to sit. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then finally, you need to stay away from Luca. I sighed tiredly. We already had this conversation. No, she said sharply. You don't understand. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached into her purse and pulled out an old photograph. She handed it to me. In the picture, a much younger Luca stood beside a smiling woman with dark curls. They looked deeply in love. What happened to her? I asked quietly. Diane's expression darkened. She died. Coldness spread through me. What? Her name was Amelia. Diane swallowed hard. Luca loved her more than anything. Something painful twisted in my chest hearing that. Not jealousy exactly. Fear. He wanted to marry her, Diane continued. But strange things started happening whenever they were together. I froze. The same things. Lights flickering? Electrical failures. Pressure in the air. Diane noticed my expression immediately. Yes, she whispered. Just like with you. My blood ran cold. What are you saying? Diane leaned closer. My grandmother believed the men in our family carried some kind of curse. I almost laughed, except she looked deadly serious. She called it a soul bond, Diane continued quietly. She believed once every generation, someone in our family meets a person they're spiritually tied to. My pulse thundered. That's impossible. I thought so too. She looked away briefly. Until Amelia died. Silence crashed between us. How? I whispered. Diane's eyes filled with guilt. Car accident. Something about her tone felt wrong. Not sad. Ashamed. What aren't you telling me? Diane closed her eyes for a second. She was arguing with Luca right before it happened. A chill crawled down my spine. They were emotional. The weather turned violent. Her voice shook now. Then her car lost control. Thunder suddenly rumbled overhead despite the clear sky. Diane looked terrified. I watched my brother destroy himself after that, she whispered. He blamed himself for years. I could barely breathe. You think Luca caused it? No, she said quickly. But whatever this connection is, it's dangerous. My hands trembled slightly now, because deep down, some part of me already knew she was right. That evening, I returned to the apartment feeling numb. Soul bonds. Curses. Dead girlfriends. It sounded insane, yet every impossible thing happening around Luca and me made it harder to dismiss. I walked into the dark apartment slowly, then froze. Luca sat on my couch. Relief slammed into me so suddenly my knees nearly gave out. He stood immediately. You're okay? You broke into my apartment? You changed the locks? No. Then technically I entered. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Then I remembered Diane's story. The smile vanished instantly. Luca noticed immediately. What happened? I stared at him carefully. You never told me about Amelia. His entire body went still. The room temperature seemed to drop instantly. Diane talked to you. Not a question. I crossed my arms tightly. Why didn't you tell me? Pain flickered across his face. Because I didn't want you looking at me like that. Like what? Like I'm dangerous. Lightning flashed outside the windows. But there wasn't a storm. Luca noticed it too. His jaw tightened. She told you about the accident? I nodded slowly. Silence stretched heavily between us. Then finally, I loved Amelia, he admitted quietly. But what I feel with you, he looked at me like the words physically hurt. It's stronger. My breath caught painfully. That's not possible. I know. The lights overhead flickered violently again, and suddenly every emotion I'd been fighting exploded out of me. I'm scared, I admitted. The confession echoed through the apartment. Lucas stared at me silently. I don't understand what's happening to us, I whispered. And now I find out the last woman connected to you died. The guilt in his eyes nearly broke me. I would never hurt you. I know. And that was the problem. I trusted him completely, even when logic told me not to. Luca stepped closer. Slowly. So what now? I looked up at him, at the man my soul somehow recognized before I ever did. Then quietly, honestly, I don't know how to stay away from you anymore. And the second the words left my mouth, every light in the apartment exploded. The explosion wasn't like before. This time, it wasn't just lights. It was everything. Bulbs shattered. The television sparked and died. The air conditioner screamed before going silent. Even my phone on the wheeler cracked down the middle like something had physically squeezed it. I stumbled backward. Luca moved instantly, catching me before I hit the floor. The moment his arms wrapped around me, the entire building's power grid flickered. Not just my apartment. I could feel it in the walls, in the streetlights outside, in the distant hum of the city. Something was responding to us. Okay, I whispered shakily. This is getting worse. Luca didn't let go immediately. Neither did I want him to. That was the most terrifying part. When we finally separated, he looked paler than before. This isn't attraction, he said quietly. I know. It's recognition. My stomach dropped. The next morning, Diane showed up uninvited. She didn't knock. She just walked in like she still owned access to my life. And Luca was already there. Course he was. The tension in the room was immediate. Diane took one look at us standing too close and closed her eyes briefly. Like she already knew she lost control of something. You told her everything, Luca said flatly. I told her the truth. No, he replied coldly. You told her your version of it. Diane turned to me. You have to end this. I laughed once. End what exactly? She stepped closer. This bond. The words still didn't feel real, but it landed heavier every time she said it. You think I chose this? I snapped. You think I want my life falling apart because I look at your brother? It's not just that you look at him, Diane said sharply. It's that your bodies are reacting like you've known each other before this life. Silence. Luca's expression tightened slightly, because that part was true. I'd felt it too many times now. The familiarity, the instinct, the unbearable pull. Diane pulled out another envelope, this one older. Faded? She placed it on the table. Open it. I hesitated. Then did? Inside was a handwritten document, and an old sketch, a man and a woman. Not Luca, not me, but something about them made my chest ache instantly. Below the sketch was a note. Soul bonds repeat. They always find each other again, but every time something breaks. My hands went cold. What is this? I whispered. Diane's voice softened. A record from my grandmother's journals. Luca stepped closer to read it. His face went still. Because he saw it too. The repetition, the pattern, different names, different lives, same connection, same destruction. This is insane, I said, backing away. You're telling me we've been, what? Reborn soulmates? Diane didn't deny it, and that silence was worse than an answer. That night, I tried to leave. I really did. I packed a bag. I told myself I was going to a hotel, anywhere away from Luca. But as I stood at the door, my hand stopped on the handle because I had felt him before I saw him, behind me. You're running again, Luca said quietly. I didn't turn around. I have to. No, you don't. My voice broke slightly. People get hurt around this. Amelia got hurt. That wasn't you. But what if it is next time? Silence. Then his voice softened. I've spent years trying not to feel anything like this again, he admitted. I thought I was cursed. I finally turned around. He looked exhausted, not dangerous, not cursed, just human. I met you, he continued, and suddenly I stopped wanting to run. My throat tightened. This is wrong, I whispered. No, he said gently. It's just complicated. A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. I'm married? You're leaving him. I don't even know what I'm leaving him for. Luca stepped closer. Slowly. For me, he said simply. The words should have felt selfish. Possessive. Wrong. Instead, they felt like truth. My chest ached painfully. And then the apartment lights flickered softly. Not violently this time. Like the world was breathing with us instead of breaking. Luca noticed. So did I. See? He whispered. It's not destruction anymore. My hands trembled. Because he was right. For the first time. It wasn't chaos. It was alignment. And I hated how safe it suddenly felt. Outside, somewhere far away, thunder rolled gently across a clear sky. Not a storm. Not a warning. More like something watching. Waiting. And for the first time since meeting Luca, I stopped being sure I wanted to run. The next morning, everything felt too quiet. Not peaceful wrong. Like the world was holding its breath. I woke up on the couch fully dressed, a blanket draped over me. For a second, I thought the previous night had been a dream. Then I saw Luca. He was sitting on the floor beside the couch, head leaned back against it, eyes open. Watching me. You didn't sleep, I said softly. I couldn't. My chest tightened. Because the truth was, neither could I. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes of something that didn't belong to this life. Hands reaching for each other. A storm. A scream. And then silence. I spoke to Diane, Luca said quietly. My stomach sank. What did she say? She wants you gone. I closed my eyes. Of course she did. But Luca's voice changed slightly. But she also said something else. I opened my eyes again. He looked tired, but certain. She said, if we don't separate this time, it won't just be emotional damage. My throat tightened. It'll escalate. To what? Luca hesitated. Then, loss. The word landed heavily between us. Not dramatic, not vague, final. That afternoon, I met Diane one last time. She didn't try to convince me anymore. She just looked. Resigned. I tried to protect him, she said quietly. After Amelia, I promised myself I would never let him go through that again. I swallowed. So you're trying to separate us. I'm trying to stop history. But her voice wasn't as confident anymore. Because even she could see it. We weren't the same as before. Something had changed. Something had already crossed the line. I don't think this is about danger anymore, I said slowly. I think it's about choice. Diane frowned. Choice? I nodded. For the first time. I don't feel like I'm being pulled blindly. Her eyes flickered slightly. I stood up, and I think he feels it too. That night, Luca met me at the old bridge outside the city. The same bridge I used to pass every day without noticing it. Now, it felt like the center of everything. He was already there when I arrived. Rain was beginning to fall lightly. Of course it was. He turned toward me immediately. Neither of us spoke at first. Just looked at each other. Like we were remembering something neither of us could fully access. You came, he said finally. I nodded. I had to. A long silence passed between us. Then I whispered, what are we supposed to do? Luca stepped closer. This time, nothing in the world broke. No lights flickered. No air shifted violently. But something deeper moved instead. Something quieter, like recognition settling into place. I think we stopped running, he said. My breath shook slightly. And if we're wrong? His eyes softened. Then we're wrong together. That hit harder than anything else. Because for the first time, there was no fear in his voice, only certainty. Not about fate, not about curses, but about me, about us. The rain softened. The wind calmed, and instead of destruction, there was stillness. I stepped closer until there was barely any space between us. This changes everything, I whispered. Luca shook his head slightly. No, he said gently. It just reveals everything that was already there. My hand lifted slowly. Paused. Waiting. And for once I wasn't being pulled. I was choosing. I placed my hand in his. And the world didn't explode. It didn't break. It didn't burn. It aligned. Like something ancient had finally clicked into place. Luca exhaled softly, forehead almost touching mine. So this is what it feels like, he whispered. What? Coming home. And for the first time in my entire life, I understood what love was supposed to feel like. Not chaos. Not confusion. Not fear. But certainty. Even in the rain, even in the storm, even in everything that tried to stop it. We didn't need the world to approve it. We only needed it to survive it. And we did.